gone into your psychological health, mental well-being, but there's still people who are struggling with this, and particularly when we go through unprecedented time now. And now, folks, is the time to be a little bit intentional with managing our psychological health, because we want to be able to come out of this better, stronger, and have better relationships. The concerns that we're having about our psychological health are huge. And, you know, research has shown just a little bit of reduction in, say, in stress, whether it's a 2% or 3% or a 5% reduction in stress, could mean the world for ourselves and what we're going through. So today, more than ever before, I would like to inspire you to take action around some of these things we're going to talk about today, and really find out what strategies that you can bring in. I talked about common sense that you can bring into your everyday life, even as most of us are either stuck at home or working remotely. At Genos, we have a model. We call it the Genos Model of Emotional Intelligence. And really, it's the 6, we believe, core areas in order to help us better manage our emotions and how we respond to them. And just quickly, I wasn't even going to go into the actual definition of emotional intelligence, but at Genos, we say it's about using intelligent responses to the emotions that we're all going to feel. You might feel stress, you might feel anxious, you might feel happy. But your reaction to it, if it is intelligent, that is where the EI kicks in, so that you can feel more positive about yourself and also make other people feel positive about themselves or the situation. There are 2 that I want to highlight. I want to highlight the self-awareness. So at the top over there, you see the core emotional intelligence competencies. There is self-awareness. And we talk about if you are practicing that and you're having intelligent responses and you're more self-aware, we call that being in a productive state. And that's what we call being present. Whereas if you're struggling with self-awareness, we say that you are disconnected. So that is the unproductive state that we'll be talking about over there. So what is this self-awareness? As I said, these are the 2. This is one of the areas that I want to focus on in that model. Well, self-awareness is the ability, or it is the practice of literally being aware of how you feel at any given time. Okay? What is your mood right now? What was your mood yesterday when the announcement came out? And tapping into why you are feeling like that. That self-awareness. You know, the thing about these emotions is that we experience thousands of them, let's say within a 24-hour period. But the fact is, we are not necessarily aware of how they are affecting us. And this is where self-awareness needs to kick in. We need to become a little bit more aware of what we're feeling. So if I'm feeling anxious, this is what I'm feeling. Now, what is the sort of intelligent response? Or what can I do to work on this anxiety or stress that I'm feeling? There's also another one there called self-management. Now, self-management is managing the highs and the lows that go over a prolonged period of time. So you may have been feeling stress about this situation or this anxiety over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And it is about managing those lows as well as developing strategies to keep yourself even keel. So those are the 2 I sort of want you to tap into: self-awareness and self-management. So this self-awareness, I just want to talk a little bit about that using this neuroscience of emotions, our understanding of what's happening at the moment, why we're feeling a particular way. This sort of helps us to appreciate a little better the behavior that we might be exhibiting. And by the way, this behavior might be conscious, it might be unconscious. So typically what happens when there's an event, so there was an announcement yesterday that the roads into Nairobi are being closed. The first thing is the emotional brain. It's that part of your brain, collectively referred to as the emotional brain, looks at that particular event and quickly makes a determination whether the event is friendly or unfriendly, okay? And without, in milliseconds, it communicates this to the front of the brain, the thinking part of the brain, which is called the prefrontal cortex, which then allows us to make a decision around that particular event. So what happens in the neuroscience of emotions is that positive emotions tend to sort of broaden and we say build the way we think and behave, letting us see more options and respond more creatively. Okay, conversely, negative emotions, so that anxiety, that anxiousness, that concern, the frustration that you're feeling, that one tends to narrow and limit our thinking and our perspective. And sort of it causes more of a reactionary behavior. So yesterday, I understand that as soon as this, this announcement was made by the president, some people already began to react and go to the supermarket and begin, panic buying already. So this sort of reactionary behavior, it's good to understand that this is exactly what is going on in our brains or in our minds. When people begin to feel uncertain about anything, so an event happens, there's an announcement that is made, we start to begin uncertain, we begin to make assumptions. So assumptions like the goods are going to be, sold out of the supermarket. So let's quickly go and buy them, panic buying. Or we feel stressed, we begin aggressive behavior. So, for example, aggressive behavior, let me use an example of how it manifests itself. We have held a couple of these webinars. And as Vicky had said at the beginning, due to security purposes, we needed to admit people one by one. Those security purposes are because there are people around the world who are now sort of interfering in a lot of these meetings that are being held by behaving inappropriately. And that is just simply because they don't have a good way of managing the anxiety and the stress that they're going for. And therefore, they become a little bit aggressive and start behaving sort of counterproductively. We can look at anxiousness, for example. People become reactive. I've already given examples of people, the panic buying and things like that. People are worried. They become problem focused. So this thing is the looming thing today. We can't focus on anything else because we're worried about where things are going to end up, or we start playing the blame game because we're fearful. Okay. But let's look at some positive emotions. Now, again, these positive emotions can be brought in. You can quickly change from worry to, say, having a sense of purpose. And we've seen that where there are people who, when they're confronted with this situation, this crisis, they've actually begun to engage one another productively. People have gone out and began maybe looking out for their neighbors. Or, for example, where I live, it's a sort of, there's a gate to get into the main area where all the apartments are. They've placed something there to help protect people, a temperature gun and water and things like that. That sense of purpose begins to manifest itself in ways that are more productive. Or if we feel valued, we begin to care for other people. If we're informed, okay, we perhaps start looking for solutions instead of being more reactionary. And if we're empowered, we begin to innovate a little bit more and look for creative ways that we can deal with what is going on. And you just need to simply go on the internet or even just in your own neighborhood to see examples of how people have risen up to this challenge. Things that have been posted about people who have really shown the best of humanity in spite of this. Yes, there are people who have shown perhaps the not so flattering, dare I say, the worst side of our humanity, but there are a lot of people who have shown the best side of their humanity. And that emotional intelligence is tapping in so that we can show the best of us as we all go through this together around the world. So, all emotions are important. whether they're pleasant or they're unpleasant. It's the price of living. That's what allows you to know that you have a pulse, okay? But what is important to do in sort of a crisis type of environment is to sort of pay attention a little bit more to how we feel and to begin to act a little bit more intentionally with these emotions. Intentionally. Now, when I say act intentionally, you feel that I'm feeling stressed. This stress is perhaps being counterproductive in terms of what I want to do. Being intentional would be, okay, what can I do? I don't want this emotion to overtake me. Instead, I want to create a more positive emotion so that I can act a little bit more positively with a little bit more intention. Notice and intentionally act rather than allowing these emotions to take control. Oh, sorry, I've gone too far. So I wanted to just share this with you. I threw this in here when I was preparing this. This is something that's actually used by the Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence, and it's a mood meter. And it's a simple a diagram to sort of illustrate how you are feeling right now. What I've done is I want to ask you, how have you felt over the last 24 hours? Let me rephrase that. What emotions have you felt over the last 24 hours? So I put in a couple of emotions over there, but just type into the chat box, if you will. And Vicky, maybe you can share some of those emotions that people have felt over the last 24 hours. Just what people have felt. As you think back and you begin to sort of become a little bit more self-aware, what have people felt over the last just 24 hours?
We have gratitude, anxiety, frustrations, anxiety. So anxiety is a big one. Uncertainty, frustrations, frustrated. Anger is anger.
Very strong emotion there, anger.
Is joy. There's uncertain, worry, emotional. So we have, I think the main theme that I'm seeing here is uncertainty, fear, uncertainty, anxiety. Well, there's someone who's put sadness. That's a pretty deep emotion, sadness. And we have on the other side, joy and gratitude.
Okay. So, you know, this exercise, I love it because what it does is it begins to, and you don't even need a crisis to have felt these emotions. This is something that you should be regularly doing. Now, when I say regularly, I'm talking, it could be hourly, it could be every 3 or 4 hours, it could be at the end of the day, it could be at the beginning of the day. Just go back and ask yourself, what did I feel over the last time? What did I feel over the last 2 hours? What did I feel over the last 3 hours? And as you begin to write them down, I can't stress this enough. Don't just, this is not an existential exercise where you say, oh, I felt anger, I felt sadness or whatever. Write them down. And then begin to ask yourself, what did I do? What did I do the minute I started feeling that anxiety? What decision did I make? Decisions taken over a period of time become behavior. Behavior ultimately leads to performance. Then ask yourself, what could I have, ask yourself, what outcome did I want? What outcome did you want? You wanted that anxiety removed? You wanted to feel more certain? So what could I have done to do that? And you'll find yourself as you begin to tap into these emotions, this self-awareness, that you may look at decisions that you may have made and said, you know what, that perhaps wasn't the right decision that I felt. But that was your emotional brain functioning. Maybe this is what I should have done, or this is what I can do next time I begin to feel this way. And you can even preempt these things, you know, even away from this crisis. I'll give you an example of something that makes me anxious. As I said, away from this crisis. You know who makes me anxious? Matatus. There, I said it. You get on the road, unaendesha gari vizuri kwa lane, matatu ndio hiyo inaingia. I automatically begin to feel anxious. Sometimes I feel even stronger emotions, anger, frustration. And typically my decision used to be non-productive. yell at the matatu, chase him as he turns to the left and I'm supposed to be going to the right to go to my office. And I'm chasing that matatu because I feel that I need validation for my feeling of frustration and anger, and I need to take it out on this matatu driver and pull up to him and yell at him and say, "Wait, how are you driving?" But clearly that was unproductive. But what I've been able to do is I've been able to preempt. It's not that the matatu still doesn't make me anxious, but I am able to preempt that feeling of anger, anxiety, frustration. And I have a more intentional, shall I say, productive way of acting, particularly in that situation. So again, use it for this crisis, use it for any situation, use it for your relationships. As I said, Genos, we're here about not just business, but also your well-being in relationships and whatever situation you might find yourself in.
Yeah. And let me just add on a little bit to that, coming to this crisis, and I'll share a personal example. I'm sure for most consultants, the first thing they're thinking is, especially if you do a lot of face-to-face work, is, oh my goodness, how am I going to move on from here? Because I can imagine revenue streams are getting cut down. And my personal example is waking up feeling a deep sense of sadness because I didn't know what was going to happen. But as preempting that and kind of even just grounding yourself back to the normal day-to-days. I have children, so focusing and deciding that that's my go-to at that particular point. I'm going to tackle this problem and I'm going to tackle that. And in the middle of all that, that's productive and gives me time to think through what needs to be done ultimately.
Yeah. I love that example, Vicky. It's like, I'll just use one more quickly just to add on to what you're saying. You see two people walking on the road. We're supposed to be practicing social distancing or physical distancing, as I prefer to call it. And you see two people and you feel a little bit, I don't know, irritated. Why aren't these people practicing what everybody is doing? But how about looking at those two people and instead of feeling that irritation and anger, saying, why are they, oblivious to what's going on? Why don't you look at two people and perhaps have a little bit of empathy for them, or compassion, or even gratitude that they're alive? So it's really flipping the switch to help you manage some of these particularly strong emotions that you might be feeling. Easy to say. This is an academic exercise for the most part, but start putting them into practice. All right, let me just move on and talk a little bit about some of these proactive strategies for well-being. We have three that I'm going to talk about today. They are the thinking, and I just have the icons there, but it's the thinking, the physical, and the relationship. So these are the three proactive strategies: the thinking, the physical, and the relationship. Okay? So let's get into it. Let's talk about this thinking. Okay? What are, we call it the thinking proactive strategy that you can do? Well, how about beginning to create boundaries? For example, how much time you spend on your computer, absorbing all of this news and social media. How much time do you spend on your phone? How much time do you spend around people who are taking up too much of your time, constantly feeding you negative emotions? We all know we're parts of those WhatsApp groups where it is just WhatsApp after WhatsApp of doom, gloom, or half-baked theories. How much time are you spending on that? You need to now start being a little bit proactive and say, you know what, Wachayo, guy, I've taken myself off Instagram, for example. I mean, I've already got enough sources for people to send whatever information they want regarding this crisis we're going through. Okay? Reducing, obviously, as I've said, your news, your social media, being a little bit more thankful. Every day you wake up, thankful that, knock on something, you're there. God has allowed you to see another day, as we've seen. Tens and thousands of our compatriots around the world haven't. Okay? Perhaps being able to take a little bit of time to look at the perspective of this thing. And perspective taking comes in different ways. Balancing what you read For example, if you're constantly being fed and sources of information that are negative about this, well, balance it. There's channels out there, there's Twitter feeds, Facebook feeds. There's one that I follow called the Good News Network. That is all they post is good news about whatever it is that we're going on. Diarizing, so journaling, writing down some of the things that you're feeling. We just did that exercise. Write down those feelings on a regular basis. I'm regularly feeling sad, stressful, particularly if you're feeling these sort of stronger emotions. You know, just to go back to creating those barriers. Those barriers might also be sort of physical barriers that you want to create. So, you know, barrier in terms of this is my work area. This is not an area where perhaps the children can come in. So creating those, sorry, did I say the word barriers? Boundaries, creating boundaries in terms of your workspace, okay? So this, you have to sort of reframe and tell yourself a different story. That's what this thinking is about. Post-traumatic stress is not something that only people who have been to war or have been in battle suffer from. All of us are going to go through this because we are going to come out at the end of this. But if you don't start sort of feeding your mind, telling yourself a new story every day, it might be very difficult for a lot of us to be able to bounce back and contribute sort of positively, particularly when we come out of this. So, you know, just ask yourself what's most important. What's most important? Most important is that we all survive. Indeed, if we can thrive and we can come out better for this. What we're looking for is post-traumatic strength through all of these strategies that I've talked about. There's sort of one more I wanted to add. Yeah, have fun while you can during these times. And when I talk about having fun, I'm talking about some of us, we are trying to work from home remotely. It's obviously a stressful situation, but also balancing that time. I'm going to talk about relationships with the family, but it's sort of having fun. And when I talk about having fun, using these digital tools at our disposal. So whether it is, you know, watching a series that's going to cheer you up, you know, participating in these virtual discourse that every DJ around the world seems to be doing, you know, listening to podcasts that are giving you sort of positive information. That's what I mean by allowing yourself to also enjoy these unprecedented circumstances that we're all having. By the way, guys, as I'm talking about this, please feel free to put in whatever comments you want in the chat box. Vic, if there's anything there, maybe somebody wants to add something, I'm happy to.
Mary, do you want to?
Yeah. Mary, did you want to say something?
Mute myself. There's a time I tried to interject, but I was muted by the host,
Oh,
which
I'm
is
sorry.
good because I can interrupt and talk too much. I think two things have caught my eye when you were talking about boundaries. One was what you said, you disengaged from Instagram. I actually am finding that WhatsApp groups can be very, very, it's like an onslaught. I belong to a number of groups, whether it's my, you know, so many groups that I belong to. And literally I can have hundreds and hundreds of messages. And whilst I don't open them, if you scrub to the top of your phone, you can sort of see. And I was looking for a way in which I could mute them because they're muted. But if you can't mute all of you can't mute one group. If you don't want to see them, then you won't see all groups. And some are for business, you know, some are coaches, some are ICF. So I really try, what I've done on my phone, and I've done this before, is and it's my phone, and I'm sure there are other phones that you could do that. You can actually block the time you want to be on social media. So I've put it from this time to this time, and actually it switches them off and tells me my time is over, and it switches them off. It's only if I want to put it back on. And then you say for 15 minutes, for 1 minute, or ignore the limit. And it has graphs and it shows me how much time, because I think that onslaught on the brain is too much. There's so much news. So I really get you by saying you pulled out of that. The other one I think is from a leadership point of view. I used to have and I sometimes still have, I haven't completely fixed it, anger. You know, and many of us women, sometimes, you know, you are shouting at your house staff. You're angry about something else, but you're always shouting, you're always angry. And I had to kind of go into myself and understand, why is it I'm always angry? And you actually find, if you're aware of your emotion, it's something else, you come and take it out on others. And we see this in offices, particularly at a time like this, because as you showed in that graph, you're uncertain, you're anxious. It can come out because you're not in control of the situation. I'm very much a control person. I like to know everything that's happening. It has to be Mary control. Then the leader, you'll find that a number of you find, or if you're a leader or your boss, will start getting is anger. So I think having empathy for people when they're angry and not reacting the same, and understanding it's coming from somewhere else, is probably not you. Usually leaders have a lot of deadlines and things to do and pressure and deadlines and KPIs, and they react. If they're not good at self-management, you see them reacting in this, being temperamental and being sympathetic and trying to understand that that person doesn't have a lot of emotional intelligence, and how can they build it up. And I guess it's where, Derek, you're trying to show us how to build that up. One of the ways I built things up was creating boundaries, even for friends. Their friends I just sort of stopped dealing with because they're negative. It's always negative, and I don't want to have negativity in my life. So I'm really finding this interesting as you talk, because I can see things I relate to.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Mary. I was just pulling up my phone, and I wanted to share 2 apps that I have put on my phone, again, to sort of curb how much time I spend on social media. And I don't mind sharing them with you. One of them is called Focus Keeper. These are free apps. Focus Keeper.
Nice.
The other one is called SC, or Self-Control and Focus Keeper. And then there's another one called Forest, but that one you have to pay for. But these 2, Self-Control and Focus Keeper, you can just download those apps.
I will.
And they can help you manage the time. Thank you so much for that. All right, so let me just move on and talk a little bit about the physical. So when it comes to the physical, there's no 2 ways about it. I mean, we want to talk about things like sleep, what we're ingesting, exercise, and things like that. Clearly, sleep has been linked, or getting enough sleep has been linked to better overall function of our minds. Clearer thinking, better decision-making, better mood, emotion management, energy, stronger immune system. Guys, get your sleep. Now, listen, I want to talk, particularly during the first days of this crisis. I was staying up until those wee hours of the morning, ingesting all of that information on the TV for the, you know, FOMO, the fear of missing out. So make sure you're getting enough sleep. There are no 2 ways about it. Have that sort of pre-bedtime ritual, you know, whether it is logging out of your phone, having a cup of tea, whatever it is, and get enough rest. The food and drink that is fuel for our mind. So there are no 2 ways about it. Again, memo to self, less drinking of coffee. That is my go-to, because obviously it just increases the anxiousness and the anxiety. But also we're going to include alcohol in there. In fact, I find every time I pass the fridge, I sort of have to, or pass the kitchen, I have to open and snack something, or you know, want to drink. So I have to begin to practice this self-discipline. Food is fuel for our body and our mind. There are no 2 ways about it. So making sure you're eating the right thing, the whole foods, the protein, and that sort of thing, moderating sugar, making sure you're eating healthy. All of that is just going to help us we try to manage this situation that we're going through. Exercise, absolutely. Guys, exercise, you got to keep moving, particularly now that we're sort of stuck indoors. So whether you can follow a video or a workout app, or do some, you know, some jumping jacks or push-ups or something in your room, or even if you're allowed, you can go outside and maybe as you practice the physical distancing, try and get in regular amounts of exercise. I think that has shown to be important, particularly now. And then this one we talked about in our last seminar, the mindfulness or the meditation. Now this mindfulness, guys, if you're not doing this, I have to tell you that you're missing out, because our minds are racing, literally. Our minds are as we are experiencing all of this collectively, the mindfulness is a technique where we begin to be a little bit more centered. And there are various mindfulness and meditation practices that we can put in, whether it's through the breathing, the taking of the deep breaths, whether it is through the body scan, but take time out of your day regularly to sort of bring yourself at peace and at ease through these mindfulness practices. And again, there are so many people out there who are experts on this. You can follow them. I like the breathing one. The breathing one is the one that I really like, breathing more deeply and slowly and sort of oxygenating our red blood cells. This really blocks those biochemical effects of stress and everything. In fact, why don't we do a little bit of breathing right now? I'm sure we have a few minutes. And sort of everyone just sort of sit comfortably in your chair, wherever you are, put your feet flat on the ground. You don't have to close your eyes, and just take in sort of these deep breaths of air. Hold it in for a count of 2 and then just let it out. And you will automatically begin to feel a little bit more calm. Okay, breathe in again. And sort of just relax the body. And then breathe out. And literally, you will sort of be, as I said, calmer. Your brain begins to think a little bit more laterally, and maybe begin to look at how to solve particular problems. So doing some of these things on a regular basis. I'm just going to add 2 things that I didn't include on this list. Some of the senses that we respond to the most in terms of our physical senses are the sense of sound and sense of smell. Forget about our sense of sight, sound and smell. So what you listen to as you're working, particularly as you're working. So particularly that mood music, if you're working at home and you're sort of trying to, block out the kids and block out the distractions, just be a little bit more intentional with what you're listening to. And again, go online and find sort of music that is absolutely designed to help you be more productive in terms of that. And then the scent. So you can't see it right now, but just beyond me, on my desk over there, I have some scented candles. Yes, I'm a man, last time I checked, but I have scented candles because
Nice.
Yes, I do. This sort of smell.
It's a tip. I'm going to do this.
Yeah. It actually, and I recommend mahogany, eucalyptus, or, whatever you choose. It sort of, again, helps with a calming sort of effect. So these are some of the things that you can tap into, particularly in terms of our physical environment. Okay, I'm going to move on, guys. Just so that you can see all of those notes. So those are the things that I talked about. I want to talk about relationship. This is the 3rd proactive strategy that I want to focus on. And this one, we're going to look at relationship improvement or relationship management, staying connected, and having sort of these regular virtual interactions. So it comes as no surprise. What we're going through is an opportunity for you guys to begin to improve your relationships, not destroy them. I've seen stories of people who are cooped up in the same house and their relationship is beginning to fall apart. Please, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about building on this relationship, okay? Use this time with your loved ones, whoever they are in the house, so that you're in close proximity with. And you can do this by literally setting time, goals, actions. If those friends or relatives happen to be somewhere else, I think everybody's doing that. We're calling in and checking in on people. Mary, you talked about that. I can't tell you the number of calls I've gotten from the most unexpected sources, people you haven't heard from in a while, just checking in and saying, hey, how's it going?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the time to sort of stay connected. Go ahead, Mary.
No, I'm saying absolutely. I agree. To me, I fail on your number 2, the physicals. And I think I've taken 1 or 2 things that I need to do there. Like, for example, I'm simply not even exercising or walking around. And I've gone back to my glass of wine a bit too many. Mindfulness, I'm good on. So I'm definitely improving, but the relationship, I think you're absolutely up there. And I think that's what sort of kept me, you know, sort of like my head together. I've had people from all over the world, and even in Kenya. You're quite right.
Yeah. Just this weekend, our extended family, we have people in far-flung areas here, the US, Canada. We had a virtual meeting, a virtual hangout. So all of us, we all came in and we, on Skype, and we're able to check in and more importantly, see each other. It really helped to check in, particularly with people who might be stuck in circumstances that are not as good as ours.
It's a very good idea. A family meeting by Google Hangout, and you all see, or Skype, and you all see each other. That's a brilliant idea. Yeah,
we did that. And then for business, I think Vicky was going to talk about this, these virtual hangouts. So whether it's a virtual happy hour or something that you can do with your team away from work, I think is just great in terms of dealing with what we're going through. So yeah, I think I'm going to leave it at that to talk about relationships. And what I want to do right now is to find out from the participants in this webinar, what strategy can you commit to doing or trying? You can just type it in the chat box over there. What strategy can you commit to? Or it could be part of the strategies that we talked about, or maybe you're already doing it. So this is a question of, I'm going to continue doing this. What can you do or can you commit to trying? I'd love to get what people are thinking right now. Vicky?
I have mindfulness and meditation, continue keeping fit and exercising. There's Priska who has said exercising. Evelyn, reduce my time on social media. Josephine, limit social media intake. David Mulwa, connecting and reconnecting to family and friends. Jane, exercising. Jackson, keep to a schedule. Lillian, weekly virtual meetings with team and family. So far it has worked well. John, exercising. Yvonne, mindfulness and exercising. Peter Kibaka, daily workout, down on social media. Jane, watch my diet. Anne Mahinda, think more positively. Peter Kibaka, cut social media, check on my team online. Lena, I love the idea of the virtual family hangout. I commit to create weekly hangouts with extended family. Violet, move more. Sheila, take a walk. Virtual calls. There's a lot of limit social media. There's also check on my friends and family, exercise more. Again, social media. I think also for me, the family hangout has really rang a bell. I hadn't thought of it. In fact, right after this, I'm going to call them all for one. I think it's actually a great idea.
I thought the same thing. I've got cousins who went to Nyanyuki and they said, we've created, you know, we're creating rooms for you Nairobi guys, you know, come, and we're thinking of building some more things. But now, of course, we're on lockdown. I mean, these are the first people I'm going to call after this. You're quite right.
Yeah, there's someone who has said, who raised a question earlier on and talked about people have been separated, and now for the next 21 days, we might have spouses separated because now they can't travel the way they were traveling. And I hope, Miriam, this is something you can actually think about, having hangouts with family, and it can't be easy, I'm sure, but I'm sure it will be something that can actually help.
Yeah, there's something I'd like to comment on that Derek talked about, and I used to do it, and I now do it, but not as intentional. But I think from your slide, Derek, and I don't recall which one, you know, and I think Zuhura, when we had the other topic webinar, she also talked about it. You know, when you give to others, it gives you something to do outside of yourself and gives you a purpose. And now Derek has said something that's really given me an aha moment. When you're grateful, you know, and you know, for the things you do have, it kind of, I don't know which emotion, Derek, you said it releases, you know, when you're grateful for something, because we are all focusing on the negative side of this situation. But there's so many things to be grateful for. I'm grateful I haven't had the corona. I'm grateful nobody I know has had it. I'm grateful my 85-year-old mother is still healthy. I'm grateful I still have some money to send for provision. I'm grateful that there are people who are delivering food, that I don't have to go out and do it. I'm grateful for the people I live who are providing me security, that they haven't had a problem and then there's no security at the gate. I mean, I'm grateful to God that, you know, we don't have as many as we could have in New York. So I think it gives you a very different and very positive thing. And I didn't hear anybody talk about, you know, the journal. You said, you know, try and journal, be grateful every day, have a moment of reflection. You know, that struck me as a little bit unusual, but I think this kind of webinars, and Derek, thank you, are so important to help us get us out of ourselves.
Yeah, and there's something here, well, I don't know, maybe any one of you would like to answer. Someone has asked a question about how do you help with the well-being of younger kids? I for one, because this is just personally, because I think that they're not getting enough time to work out. They wake up in the morning and they do 20 minutes of, they do the phone thing and they just do 20 minutes workout themselves. So when they wake up, they have something to look forward to. And I do that because I feel they're not running around anymore. They're not mixing with kids, but at least that's helping them release a lot of this pent up energy before they go in and start doing their online classes the whole morning. I don't know if anyone else can share what they're doing with their children. It's a question on the chat group. What are we doing to help the well-being of our younger kids?
So let me just chime in with that. When it comes to spending time with your children, yes. But what I'd like to sort of make sure that you are practicing is that when you spend time with them, make sure that it is 100% time with them. No phones, no distractions. You've put everything away and you're focusing on that little boy or that little girl or whoever they are, particularly the younger children. And I mean physically with your body, with your eyes, with your entire non-verbal communication should be, for now and for the next however long, hour, whatever it is, you are the most important person in my life. They really are. But you have got to, particularly children are very quick on picking up on the non-verbal interaction. And you're distracted. One eye is on the email that's coming in. As unaambia mtoto, aya, abu imba tena. They can quickly tell that you're not paying 100% attention to them.
Yeah.
When you do, focus on them.
Yeah. Someone has shared they bake, they play soccer. And the lockdown has actually helped them focus more on gardening. I think Zuhura was saying she gardens a lot as well.
Yeah.
I think this time is if you look at it in that way, it is a time to cultivate certain relationships that you haven't had enough time before.
Yeah. I've seen on video. I mean, there's so many on YouTube. What a number of people are doing with the kids, you know, designing very creative games to play in the house with them and, you know, chasing stuff. I would also add dancing. You know, dancing is it's an next activity. Maybe Derek, this is the exercise I'll do. You know, just, you know, kids love to see their parents dancing and everybody's, you know, because it's very a playful thing and you're not inhibited and it creates a lot of fun seeing mom, dad dancing and or big brother or uncle. I think just spending 10 minutes, old music, say today we're gonna do this 70s, then Congolese, then old, whatever. I think those can be very good. Also singing, remembering things. What are the songs you used to sing? You know, create maybe a little family activity. I'm, in a sense, I'm lucky in a way I don't have any young people, but also I'm finding that what we're doing with young adults is that we're all in our rooms with our computers, which is not very conducive. Well, my family's like that anyway, typically, but I'm thinking we need some time to just come together because everybody's in their own different rooms with their TV or their computer, and then you don't talk. So that's a challenge for me.
Fantastic. All right, guys, I just want to move on. We're going to run a little bit late, but I have just a few more important things that I'd like to share with you, particularly this thing called resilience. And so what is resilience? What is this resilience, a trait that we need now more than ever? So for me, it's the ability to begin to adapt, not eliminate, but adapt to the stress and the adversity that we're facing. The capacity to bounce back from a negative experience to your normal state of functioning. That's what this resilience is. By the way, it's not a trait that you either have or you don't have. Everybody has it. We have it to different amounts. It differs from person to person. It is about building up the reserves of resilience. You'd be surprised at how resilient you can be with your back to the wall when you have nothing to lose. But what we want to do is we want to be a little bit more intentional. We want to be more effective in building up our resilience. So let me just move on because of time. So I talked about that capacity to recover from, it can be cultivated, and there are many sort of pathways to this resilience. I have a slide over here. Yeah, I think you can see everything. It is, to me, letting go. These are the pathways. This is how you grow your resilience from a little plant to a fully blossoming tree. Letting go. Some things just, it's okay, let it go. Finding that inner strength. We're going to get through this. Love. All we need is love. In fact, love, compassion, those are the emotions we need to start tapping into. Acceptance. This is the world as it's going to be, the new normal, so to speak. You have to learn to accept this. Even when we get out of this, things are going to be different. The pausing that I talked about earlier, through the breathing, the reflecting, some of these practices. And then finding meaning, sort of leaning into the meaning. Why are we going through this? What is this really testing our resolve for? I think tapping into those can sort of build your resilience. And I know resilience is a huge topic, and maybe this is something that we will cover even further in some of the seminars that we have down the road. But I just wanted to mention it. And I also wanted to show a quick video. I came across this video a couple of days ago. Let me see if I can get it to play. It's by, well, you'll see, Maya Angelou. And I'm just going to play. It's about 3 minutes. I hope we have the time to sort of play this. And I just want you to kind of listen to Maya Angelou and what she's going through. Hopefully you can hear this.
How do I think the world would be if 1% of the world's population was complaint-free? Einstein said no genius has ever used more than 18% of the brain. But today's geophysicists say no genius has ever used more than 10% of the brain. The majority of us mumble and get around with 5, 6, 7%. If we've been able to stay alive at all, alive and future thinking, alive and having enough courage to care for each other, enough courage to love, and know that we're probably 1% free. I mean, that's 1% of 60 million free of complaints. Imagine, who would we be? Who would we be if we were 1% of 600 million, 6 billion? What would happen? I tell you one thing, I think war would be laughed out of the room. I think the very word, if somebody said war, another person would say, you mean, am I supposed to kill somebody because he doesn't agree with me? I don't think so. Just imagine. People would speak kinder, more kindly to each other. Courtesy would be invited back into the living room, into the bedroom, into the children's room, into the kitchen. If 1% of our world was complaint-free, we would care more about the children and realize that every child is our child. The black one and the white one, the pretty one, the plain one, the Asian and the Muslim, the Japanese and the Jewish, everyone is our child. If we were just 1% free of complaint, imagine that we would stop blaming other people for our mistakes and hating them because they caused the mistake in our minds. Just imagine if we laughed more frequently, if we had the unmitigated courage to touch each other.
Okay, so
Just the beginning
let me pause that.
of paradigm.
Oh, I think she's still continuing. Hang on.
You know.
So just to put that video in context, she was talking about, imagine a world where people didn't complain. And she gave all of those examples. And I thought this was a brilliant video. Of course, Maya Angelou, what a soul, what a deep soul. Talking about, if we just did that small thing of, instead of looking at that glass as half, what's a cliche? I'm losing my mind over here, as half empty rather than half full, and stop complaining. Can you imagine that world? And she gave all of those examples. And so what I would like us to do, I'm not saying that obviously part of this is about how we can handle some of these strong emotions. But as we want to come out through this better human beings, let's not have the tendency to complain, to whinge, to whine. You know, professional complainers. And this is in the context of building up our resilience. You know them. Something small to something huge. This, I think, is the utopia that Maya Angelou was talking about and helps to build our resilience. So I was going to ask people to share what they've done to build resilience in the body, but because of time, I'm just going to kind of wrap up this conversation. And by the way, I'll give you a link to that video, I think, after this. There was an article written in the New York Times about, obviously, New York, we all know, is sort of at the epicenter of all of this, and what people are sort of doing to get through these difficult times. This is from March the 29th. And, you know, if you can see some of the things that ordinary people like you and I are doing, rather than complaining, rather than narrowing the mind, they are broadening, lateral thinking, looking for solutions, how we can all get through this. So again, I'll give you a link to this very interesting article. I just put some of them up there. And I'd like to wrap up with the words of the famous Greek philosopher called Epictetus. Epictetus. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That's what we're saying. We're in this for better or for worse, but ours is to be more intentional with our emotional intelligence, with our resilience, with our proactive strategies, no matter what happens. Epictetus shared this story, if I can share it with you quickly. There was two twin boys who were born of an alcoholic father. The father was a raging alcoholic. Those two twin boys grew up. One of them turned out to be an alcoholic, just like his father. The other turned out to be a successful business person. And they were both asked. The alcoholic son was asked, "Why are you an alcoholic?" He said, "Because my father was an alcoholic. And I saw him as an alcoholic." And the successful business person was asked and said, "What is the secret to your success?" And he said, "Because my father was an alcoholic." So two people whose lives completely came out differently because of how they reacted to having that sort of experience in their lives. How are you going to react going through this experience that we are going through? All right, Vicky, I think I'm going to leave it there. What I have left is just sort of there's feedback. Perhaps we can just take that quickly, and then I'll give some contact information and some of the other webinars that we have coming up. So it could be in the form of, you know, questions, or indeed just ideas based on some of the things we've talked about today.
I think we had some questions that came in from everyone who participated just before they joined in, and I'm hoping some of them were answered, somewhat to do with mental health, how to live in times of uncertainty. I think we're always being uncertain. Tomorrow is never guaranteed, sorry. One question is about how to handle staff in any lockdown. I think the webinar we have on Thursday talks about leading remotely and talks about how to handle staff away from you, how you can do that. There was a question on the roller coaster of emotions. How do you deal with a roller coaster of emotions? I am hoping that the conversation on mindfulness has given you an answer to how to settle your mind when it's just churning and churning and churning. There's a small exercise my husband was taught, because there's a time when he was very stressed, and the lady who taught him was a Danish lady, and she said, sit down and close your eyes and imagine a doorway. And when you have too many thoughts coming into your mind, imagine a doorway and let these thoughts come in. Watch them as they come in. It's a bit hard to do, but watch them and then pack them on a seat. Don't judge them. Just say, okay, I'm worried. Okay. My child is beating up the other one. Okay. Whatever it is. And then pack them. Let them come. Give them their time. Let them come. Pack them. And once you're done, you'll be calmer. Then wake up and do what you're supposed to do. So, and there are many like those out there, many mindfulness exercises that are out there that you can, that you'll find that resonate with you. The other ones were, I've also noticed there's a bit of focus on how do we ensure people are sanitizing and keeping their social distancing. I think Derek mentioned, instead of letting it get to you, you can empathize, and maybe it's a lack of information. You know, sometimes people hear one thing, but it doesn't stick, and maybe they need to hear more often. Yeah, so I don't know if Mary, you have anything to add on as well?
No, I'm just so glad that I tuned in to hear Derek's session, and it's giving me thoughts for, you know, whenever the opportunity will come. As you said, we have many of this, and I'm sure all of us EI Genos coaches will come on. The only thing I would say is emphasize, you know, what Derek said in regard to that last question. Don't worry about other people. Worry about only what you can do. Bring that focus into yourself. I mean, this last quote is brilliant on that, you know, how you react, because we spend so much time worrying about what's the government doing and what are people doing, and people are not, like you say, maybe have empathy for them and say, I wish, but focus on what you control. Because if you keep on thinking what others are doing, then you will keep worrying forever. There's nothing you can do about it. So I want to thank Derek tremendously. I got personal things. I'm going to get out of here and do them. First I hang out, then I walk.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mary. And just to add, Vicky, about the exercise that your husband did, it's almost like closing the tabs, you know, the tabs on your Google Chrome?
Yeah.
Okay. I have thousands of tabs open. So I'm also always being told, can you close those tabs or your computer is going to crash?
Yes.
Just close that tab. Close that tab of worry. Close that tab of stress. Close. And the way to do it, as you said, is through mindfulness or meditation and some of these.
Physically,
Nice.
yes.
Nice.
Yes. Okay, maybe you could share what we have. Someone is asking whether we're sharing the presentation.
I believe we're going to share some notes
Yes.
about the presentation. Vicky, are we correct? Yeah. So we'll share with you some notes based on this presentation.
And a small workbook.
Yes, a small workbook.
Yeah.
There is contact information, but I also want to let you know about our upcoming webinars. So we have one, if I'm correct, working remotely from home. That'll be in 2 days' time on Thursday. And then one for if you're a team leader, although this is for everybody really, about leading remotely.
Actually, leading remotely is on the 9th, and then working remotely is on the 14th.
I apologize, folks. It's the other way around. So leading remotely is the one that's coming up.
Yes.
And then the working remotely from home will be the one that follows. And you'll see actually these series sort of all mesh in very well. And they're all sort of tied in together. So we'll be exploring, perhaps if there were certain things that you wanted us to talk more about. Of course, we couldn't because of time, but they may be explored further in some of these other webinars that we have coming up.
Okay.
Vicky, I'll hand it over to you and I'll say thank you to everybody.
Okay, I'd like to say thank you very much to Derek and Mary for making the time, and everyone who came in. I always say that time is precious. You must choose where to spend it, and it's people choose, and you chose to spend it here, and we are thankful for that. I thank Genos as well, because they've done a lot of research. They have a lot of programs. Should you feel you want to have this program run anywhere else, just feel free to contact any of us, and we can see how to run these programs wherever that you're working or with your teams. Other than that, I wish you all a fantastic day. Be very blessed, and hope to see you on Thursday, same time. Thank you very much.